where it goes down, where you hear about the sports all around town. In the country, full of controversy to the highlights. You just not safe in the limelight.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another great episode of The Stoop, where we talk hoops, and more hoops. I'm your guy, TJ. Once again, The Stoop is always powered by Nuts and Bolts Sports. I want to give a shout out to my guy, Kev P. What's going on, Kev P?
As usual, it's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, listen, for me, this is a joy. This is like a bucket list interview. Words can't put into to how surreal this is. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a 90s cultural icon. When we talk about Big East basketball, we're talking about the Lord of Reading, Pennsylvania, the king of the hill, a 15-year vet in the league, now a guy who's coaching, a guy whose career has been synonymous with just a three-pointer. Ladies and gentlemen, put some hands together for Mr. Donyell Marshall. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Donyell Marshall, for coming to the Stoop. We appreciate you this evening. We're going to jump right to it, Mr. Marshall. So first things first, when were you first exposed to the sport of basketball?
First of all, I'll say thanks for having me. I know we've been trying to do this for a while. Finally able to get around to it, so thanks for having me on the show.
Appreciate it.
You know, as far as basketball, I've been exposed to it my whole life. You know, probably about 4 or 5 years old. Grew up playing football, baseball, basketball. You know, honestly, a lot of people don't really believe this, but basketball actually was not my best sport. At a young age, I was probably better at football and baseball. But then, you know, when you grow 8 inches in 2 years, it's time to concentrate on one of the sports. And, you know, for me, it was basketball. It's kind of hard being a pitcher at 6'8". Lost my strike zone, and then, you know, wanted to move from quarterback to receiver. Didn't think I knew when I was quarterback, throwing it across the middle, getting receivers lit up and all that stuff. I don't think I was built for that anymore. So I stuck to basketball.
Okay. So with basketball being something you've been around your whole life, at what age did you think that you could do something with it? Was when you reached 6'8", or was a little bit further along?
Obviously, we all had that dream. You know, for me, growing up watching Dr. J, Maurice Cheeks, Moses Malone, you know, Bobby Jones, all those guys, you had that dream. You know, growing up in Glenside, never really knew if the dream was a reality. But, you know, one thing that had me always being able to have that dream was my uncle Lenny Moore. Played for the Baltimore Colts, went from Reading High, went to Penn State, played for the Baltimore Colts, was in the Hall of Fame. So always had a family member who made it. So it always had me thinking above and beyond. I was always a person who never really had a lot of confidence. You know, so, you know, even in 10th, 11th grade, when I was starting to get recruited, never really thought I was that good. Just thought that, you know, being 6'9", playing in Berks County basketball, that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. It wasn't until I really went down to Philadelphia, started playing against those guys, that I started getting more confidence. Even when I went to UConn as an AllAmerican, first 2 weeks, I didn't think I was good enough. You know, everybody know the Big East back then was a very physical league. Anybody who knows me knows I was the same height, 6'9", but I was only 180 pounds, 185 pounds. So, you know, going against Alonzo Mourning and them dudes who were, you know, bigger, stronger, really took confidence away a little bit. But as it went along and I was still able to do some of the things, you know, by the end of my freshman year, I thought I'd be pretty good. Sophomore year, definitely thought I was good. My junior year, I knew I was good.
Okay.
You know, I just had a swag. My junior year at UConn that I just knew I was good, and that's when I finally realized that I had the chance to make it.
So I would like to touch on that really quick because in 93-94 season at UConn, the Big East is arguably at its best. You faced some pretty steep competition. Adrian Autry, you had Lawrence Moten, Kerry Kittles, John Wallace, Othello Harrington, just to name a few. And you went on to not only win Big East Player of the Year, but also Defensive Player of the Year. Share with us the locker room excitement for conference play, knowing that you were playing against the level of competition consistently in the conference.
Well, by the time we got the confidence, man, we got to understand is our sophomore year, we had 7 freshmen, 6 of us played a lot. And so our sophomore year, we were getting big minutes to where our junior year, we just like, we're 1 or 2 players away from being really good. And going into my junior year, I was on the USA national team. And I came back, I was the leading scorer, second leading rebounder. And like I said, that just made my confidence go out the roof because I was playing with some great guys and guys that I knew that were going to always be in the draft. And I'm like, if I'm the leading scorer of that, I know what I can do. And to talk about the locker room, man, we had so much fun, so much confidence. You know, Ray Allen was a freshman on that team. He came in, was the second leading scorer. He really helped build us up. But if you guys remember, Tribe Called Quest came out, their CD that year, Midnight Marauders, and Award Tour was one of their first hits. And before every game, before we went out onto the court, we changed the lyrics from, you know, when their cities that they named on Award Tour, we named the teams in the Big East. That was our theme song. We named off every Big East team as we was going through, and we were 16-2 that year. At that point in time, it was the best Big East record ever, and that was our motto. It was just we was on the award tour, and we was just trying to, you know, show everybody what our talents were, and we were able to do that.
Speaking of the Big East, basketball has lost some Big East heavyweights recently. Unfortunately, we lost John Thompson and Cliff Robinson. Share with us the significance of Thompson's loss as both a rival and then, you know, now you being a coach, as well as Uncle Cliff's mentorship and competitiveness.
Well, Uncle Cliff, you know, he was at UConn before I was, but, you know, by the time I got to the NBA, he'd already played in the finals and this and that. And I think for him was just like, you know, Chris Smith had got drafted, Scott Burrell had got drafted, well, Tate George had got drafted also, and then, you know, I was a lottery pick, and I think for Uncle Cliffy, he was like, yo, UConn's about to be on the map, you know, we starting to get dudes in the league, this and that. He knew I played like him, so it was like a big-time mentor for me. You know, every time we saw each other, we talked. You know, he was always making sure I was okay, you know, making sure to be coachable and things like that. You know, when he got sick a couple of years ago, I was able to see him a couple of times, and we were able to talk. And, you know, one of the things I didn't know, he was sick again. And, you know, so when I found out the news, that one hurt big time, you know, because a lot of us don't really have older brothers. I'm the oldest one in my family. And to lose somebody that you really considered a big brother, it actually hurt a lot. For John Thompson, you know, that one hurt. You know, growing up, it was Big East Mondays. It was always Georgetown, Syracuse. And for John Thompson to be the first black head coach to win a national championship, and then to be able to play against him. You know, I remember my junior year, they beat us all 4 times my freshman and sophomore year. My junior year, we beat them both times. After the second time we beat them, I remember his quote that I will always cherish and laugh at today. He said to the media asked him about me after the game, and his quote was, "I hope he leaves at the end of the year." And I thought that was, you know, big time.
That's an endorsement.
Praise for me, coming from somebody like him. And you know, you guys are from Reading. You probably know all the Cooper family.
Yes.
Don Juan Cooper was a guy who, you know, did some stuff for me, and so he started working at Georgetown, and he was very close with John Thompson III, and to the point where, you know, he worked his Georgetown basketball camps, and so my kids all went to Georgetown basketball camp, even though it was a rivalry. We actually became friends just because of being friends with them. So I remember going down and seeing my kids a couple times, and, you know, Big John pulled me to the side one time and said, "Man, I don't know what you guys did to my son, but thanks for being a great friend to him." And, you know, so that also meant a lot to me as well, you know, and things. And just when you go back and read the stories, man, with him pulling the drug dealers to the side and telling them to stay away from his players and things like that, man, that's things that coaches don't do no more, man. It's just, right. They scared. He wasn't scared of that. He wanted to let them know, these are my players, stay away from them. So we lost an icon, man, for especially with everything going on in the world today, and, you know, us black coaches that are trying to be successful, man. We lost somebody who was very, very instrumental in getting us to where we are today.
So you talked about the Cooper family, and, like, listen, man, I don't know if you understand how much of a cultural icon to the city you are. As a kid growing up in the 90s, you meant everything to me, my friends, everybody who just wanted to be like you growing up. Have you ever had an opportunity just to sit back and think about the significance and culturally what you meant to the city? And if so, what stands out in your mind about that time?
I do. And sometimes it could be difficult sitting up and really seeing what your true meaning to the city is. You know, as much as I love Reading, Pennsylvania, and that's where I'm from. You know, I have a tattoo on my arm for the coordinates of the house I grew up in, Glenside. I mean, that's how much it means to me, Glenside, and how much the city means to me. You know, I'll never forget where I came from, but I think sometimes it could be difficult because, you know, I'm a person who, when I gave back to the city, I gave back because I loved it. And, you know, I wasn't asking for praises. You didn't have my name in the newspaper. Hey, he did this, he gave back to this, he did that. So a lot of people didn't think that I gave back. And I think it was difficult when you hear people think that I didn't do anything for that city. And so sometimes you sit back and like, you know, as much as I love it, you really sit back and like, did the city really embrace you as much as you wanted them to embrace you and all that thing? And, you know, and I can sit back and, you know, I had an AAU program for 15 years. I mean, I put countless people in college basketball and the pros from Reading, and took them here and took them there where they would have never seen, you know, this and that. And, you know, used to do so many things, and that's not for me to talk about, but you know, the question you asked, I'm gonna answer it correctly. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? And so it's like, as much as I feel like, you know, being an icon or being whatever for the city, sometimes it's difficult. And you say like, you know, does the city really love you as much as you love that city?
Well, let me do this before we continue on. Let me say thank you, Mr. Marshall. Thank you for what you did to revitalize Bear Park. Thank you for your camps at Albright. Thank you for the AAU program. All things such as people like myself and others are my colleagues and my friends and my homies we all benefited from. So thank you so much. We really appreciate all you've done for the city. And I know it's real. So we ain't going to continue on that. But thank you so much. Go ahead, Kev.
No
Well, we're big on giving flowers here on the Stoop. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that. TJ just did that. And I'm going to do that and give you some flowers for what you've done for UConn. You weren't able to cut down nets, unfortunately, but you set off what would be an impressive run. Uncle Cliff kind of gave you credit for it as well. Did you know the impact that you would have on UConn when you became the first All-American to attend there?
Well, it's funny you say that, man. It's just like, you know, again, I was sold on the Big East. You know, it was Big East Mondays when we were young, Georgetown, Syracuse, Pitt. You know, you have Villanova down the street and stuff. So I was kind of sold on going to the Big East Conference. I remember Coach Chaney was at Temple, and he came to my house twice, and he finally put in the newspaper, it was like, if you're not from the Big East, you don't have a chance. And I think it was known that I wanted to go there. But it was funny because I wanted to go to Syracuse. I was sold on Syracuse. Billy Owens was there. You know, he was my idol. Even to, like, I remember on my visit, they had Billy Owens take me around. And Billy's like, yo, we can do this, we can do that. I was like, yo, Billy, cut the shit. I know you leaving at the end of the year. We ain't playing together.
That's a Carlisle guy, Central PA guy.
Like, you ain't got to lie to me on that. I know you ain't going to be here. You know what I mean? Like, you know, whatever. But I wanted to go. I wanted to go to Syracuse. But sometimes your mom knows what's right. You know, I was ready to commit. My mom ain't want me to commit, man. My mom ain't. She just has something in her that she just ain't like Syracuse. And so I remember getting the letters from Connecticut, and my Uncle Chuck, who passed away a couple years ago, I remember like I was going to throw the letter away. And I remember my Uncle Chuck telling me, man, he was like, yo, keep that letter. You can be the first. You can put that school on the map. So it just had me really thinking, you know, about like, yeah, that would be cool, like to be the first of, you know, all these major colleges and this and that, and to be the first. And, you know, when you look back on it, to know that you're the first high school All-American to go there. You're the first college All-American for them. You're the first person to ever go hardship and leave for the pros for them. You're the first person to be the offensive and defensive player of the year in the conference. I mean, it makes you smile. It makes you, you know, realize that you were, you know, like I said, I was never a person who was big confidence-wise on myself. But then when you sit back and think about it, you're like, damn, you were pretty good, you know? So it is something that I always remember. And, you know, coaching here in Connecticut, I get reminded of it a lot because the old heads that are around here, you know, they always say thank you and stuff. And you know, this is definitely has become my second home.
Very nice. Then you went on to professional basketball, of course. In your first 8 years in the league, you shared the court with 4 of the 50 greatest players of all time: Mullen, Malone, Stockton, and then Pippen later on. And then another 3 years playing the next generation's greatest with James and Durant. of the guys of the 50 greatest, who imparted the most wisdom upon you?
There's no doubt it's Malone and Stockton. The years before that, I was in Golden State. We were losing. That's what people. I remember the bad days. I tell them they can have Steph Curry and all that. These are great, but I was the days where you ain't even want to put us on TV. But when I got to Utah, those guys knew I was important to that team. And they taught me how to eat right. They taught me how to sleep right. They taught me how to lift weights. They taught me how to be a professional. Being in the NBA, you live the NBA life. In Golden State, you really wasn't winning. So you're doing some partying, you're hanging out, you're doing all those things, man. I got to Utah, I stopped the partying. I became a man. I stopped the partying. It was about playing the game of basketball. It was about trying to win. It was about trying to get to that championship. So I would definitely say Stockton and Malone really had the most wisdom on me to help me become a professional.
Okay, so paying it forward now, of the next generation, who would you say you imparted some of that wisdom upon, and whose raw talent wowed you more? Would that be Durant or James?
I only got to play 2 months with Kevin Durant. But I definitely think I had a big impact on him because when I got there were some things that was going on with the organization, and I stood up for them and being young guys and was able to, get him to see how, to be professional being older. At that time, I think I had a really good impact on LeBron. We were actually very close in Cleveland. Being the vet, being the older guy on the team and stuff like that, he really looked towards me doing a lot. At that point in time. Raw talent, you're probably going to go with Kevin Durant because of raw talent. Because by the time LeBron was so far ahead of his game, I don't know if he ever had raw. I think the last time LeBron had raw talent was third grade. I think after that, it's just all just gifted. He was, just to see
basketball savant.
Yeah, just to see him study the game. And I tell kids today, like, even my team is like, my team, only people they know in the NBA are LeBron, Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, Kyrie. They don't know any of the subs. They don't know any of those guys. They don't know any history. Then LeBron, he's, I think, 16 years younger than me, and he remembered my 360 dunk at UConn. And
one dunk.
So he's just a fan and student of the game. And so if you're asking the question on raw talent, you got to give it to Kevin Durant because he was still raw his rookie year, and I think when you look at Kevin Durant, his rookie year, we were on a losing bad Seattle team to where he was able to work on his raw talent because we were losing anyway. So it was about just getting him better. Whereas LeBron was trying to take his team from the number one pick straight to the top right from day one. And, you look at that where the talent and the steadiness of the game, LeBron was more mature than Kevin at that time in early stages of their career.
Okay. We've already touched on some of the great accolades and awards that you've already won, including your McDonald's All-American year in 1991, which I don't know if you noticed, if you're aware of it, but your year has the all-time winningest college percentage of all time. You being in there with Travis Best, who was synonymous with turning the Georgia Tech program around, Rick Brunson in his run with him, Aaron McKee, Eddie Jones at Temple, and Coach Chaney, yourself, and 4 out of the 5 members of the Fab Five had the greatest college winning percentages in coming out of college that year. But before even all that, like I said, you're the king of the hill. Your number is retired in the Geiger. Share with us some of those legendary battles, or maybe 1 or 2 memories from those Harrisburg times when you traveled up the Turnpike to play against those guys. And also, let's talk about that legendary time when you went up against Simon Gratz.
Well, obviously everybody talks about the main battle with us in Harrisburg.
Right.
We had we played each other the summer going into my senior year up in a summer league game. I think we almost fought that game because the cops was called to their youth game. Then we had the Christmas tournament where we beat them by 21, and then then we played the game, where they beat us in the district championship, with 3 refs from their conference repping the game. But, they beat us. It was cool. But it was 3 good battles. It was really good. It was good to go against, another team and another player who was, built like you and played like you and brought the best out of you. It was funny because he went on to, he played Division II, I think, a little bit after that. Dan Bowie did. And he ended up being in the Golden State Warriors training camp the one year I was out there. And it was funny because, we sat and we shook hands and we laughed about it. And, it was probably one of them things where a lot of people think we hate each other and this and that, whatever. But, we laughed and joked about it. Another battle that I tell people about is probably when I was in 11th grade when we battled Wilson 3 times that year, going against Kerry Collins, things like that. We had a bench clearing brawl at Wilson. Cutting across the lane was called that word that you don't call us. And, I don't know if you guys know who Brian Wright is.
Yes, I do.
He went ballistic on him. He was like my protector in high school and stuff. So, we had some good battles with them, and we had some good battles with Glenn Mills as well. So it was we had some good battles in high school, some really good memories. I think I have about 6 or 7 games on DVD that I pull out once in a while, watch. I showed my kids, and we just have some fun watching those games.
Let me continue on with that. Who is one of the unsung guys you may be thinking about from your Reading teams or just even in the Reading area that, just always stuck out in your mind, either growing up, watching or playing with? And then the same thing, who was an unsung guy that you might have played with at UConn?
It was crazy because my first Reading High game was my own. I never went to Reading High basketball games or football games or anything before that. Half I was, again, living in Glenside. My mom didn't have a car, so just never went to games. So I can't really say who I actually even watched before me to even say who was unsung. As I got older and played with guys like that, one of the guys that I loved and wish I would have had a chance to play with was Charlie Chisholm from the '83 team. I definitely think he's one of the best point guards that ever played up there. I love the way he played and his competitiveness and things like that. As far as my team, one of the unsung heroes was my cousin, Fats Burdine. I think if we'd have been able to, he only played our senior year. If he'd have played with us 10th and 11th grade, I think we'd have had really, as good as our 3 years in high school was, I think if he'd have played with us in 10th and 11th grade, I think he would have been that much better. He kind of took those 2 years off, and, I kind of begged him to come out our senior year, and he came out and played, and I think he was definitely a difference maker for us senior year. At UConn, I don't know who the unsung hero is. It's just because we were all, you got to understand is most of us from that team as freshmen, we were all the player of the years in the state that we played in. I think when you come back and look at it, the unsung hero probably would be Kevin Ollie.
That was my bad.
By the time we got our junior year and he was a starting point guard, I used to just say to him, yo, man, I just need you to make one jump shot. You make one jump shot during the game, because then they couldn't double team me, but they would sag off of him and they would whatever. And, by his junior year, he was knocking that jump shot down consistently to where it opened up the floor for me, our junior year. And then you go on is like coming into our freshman year, he probably was the least offensively talented guy. But to come back and play 13 years in the NBA, it shows you his work ethic and how he was, and then come back and win a national championship at UConn as a coach, things like that. So, if I had to pick one guy, really the unsung hero, I would say Kevin Ollie.
Real quick, Mr. Marshall, before I swing it back to Kev, you were featured in Street and Smith and so many publications, McDonald's once again, and you made UConn your choice, and you kind of alluded to some of the other schools that you were interested in, whether you had the choice to do it again now, or would you stick to maybe potentially thinking about Syracuse or Temple or somewhere else? But if you had to think about it again, would it still be UConn?
It's funny you say that, man, because you know, Kansas was on my list, Kentucky was on my list, North Carolina, you know, a lot of teams like that were on my list and stuff. And it was funny because when I was at Ryder coaching, we played at Kansas. And I remember taking Kansas off of my list to go visit. But when we played at Kansas, I turned to this, we took a tour. We practiced there, we took a tour. And then I turned to the assistant coach and I was like, man, UConn better be lucky that I never took a visit here to Kansas, because I think I might have ended up taking Kansas over UConn at that point in time. But, you know, it's hard to say, though, because as much as I sit back and sometimes I say, man, I wonder what it would have been like if I would have actually went to Syracuse. Obviously, I came back and I made the right choice. I mean, I played 15 years in the NBA and you know, ended up getting Player of the Year and things like that and stuff. So it ended up being the right choice. But you do have times, because there's times I do sit back and look, you know, I was the only person who left, you know, that team from going to the NBA. And I sit back sometimes, if I would have stayed my senior year where we had won the national championship, they went to the Final 8 without me. You know, and I sit back and say, okay, would the chemistry have been different where we maybe don't go to the Final 8, or would it have been that much better? Would I have been the person to get us over the hump, and would have been the first national championship?
Yeah.
So I have a question for you, sir. In previous episodes, we've talked about the change of the traditional big man. From the 4 position, you helped usher in the stretch 4. I credit Sam Perkins, yourself, and a little bit later, Rasheed Wallace, and then the floodgates opened. Tell us how that became such an important part of your game.
Well, it's funny because it's just an argument that I always get into, because it's like people remember me late in the career and they think that's like all I did was shoot threes. And I let them know that actually when I came into the league, I actually was a starting 3-man, and that I went inside, outside, and this and that. Kind of how it evolved was I got old. I got smarter. I got slower. And so where it really evolved is when I was in Toronto, when I got traded to Toronto, the funny part about it is, ironically, just like my 3-point record was against the Sixers, ironically, when I was in Toronto, when I got traded, we were playing the Sixers. It was Chris Bosh's rookie year. And we were probably playing small ball. Chris Bosh was playing the 5. I was at the 4. Vince Carter was at the 3. Jalen Rose was at the 2. Alvin Williams was at the 1. We posted up Vince Carter a lot. And so since we posted up our 3-man, your next 2 spots are your 4 and 5. Well, Chris Bosh was more inside guy at that point in time. So we pretty much had to spread the floor. I don't know if you remember Michael Curry.
Yes.
He was on the team at the time. He actually went to the head coach at that time. We were playing the Sixers, and told them to put me at the top of the key, because if my man doubled Vince, I could shoot the 3. Well, I ended up hitting 6 or 7 threes that game. And from that game on, the rest of the year, our offense was, because we were posting up Vince Carter, was pretty much spread me out on the floor so I could help spread the floor out. And I would say from that game on is when I became known as a stretch 4, you know, pretty much setting pick and rolls and pick and pop in. And honestly, even though I had a contract for a long time and whatever, like I said, I was getting older. And I think it actually helped me play a lot longer because of, you know, just picking and popping and making other defenses have to read and things like that. And I think it was, you know, it was something that I didn't know that I was going to be a part of the first part. Because like you said, I always say Sam Perkins, Detlef Schrempf, you know, guys like that probably started it before me. But I think that because they were older, a lot of people remember me first. Even Derek Coleman was doing it, you know, when he first came out.
So, again, you and the late, great Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, shared the record for the threes in the game for a number of years. You guys accomplished that feat long before it was in vogue to put up double-digit attempts from beyond the arc. I thought at that time that the record was fairly secure. Do you recall when you saw the shift in league play and thinking that it was only a matter of time before that record fell?
Well, I think for me, it was a surprise that I was even able to get that record. Because if you look at the guys who either have the number I have as far as making sure the guys who have passed it, they're all primary offensive players for their teams. And they all have the ball in their hands, and they all can come down and shoot when they want to. Whereas for me, mine was part of plays where I had to get the ball passed to me. And luckily I was on the street that they were looking for me and pass. I would say once I saw Steph Curry coming down and making the shots that he was making and shooting the shots he was able to shoot, and then Clay shooting the shots he was able to shoot, I knew it was only a matter of time before it got broken. Because like you said before, people were taking, 8, 9 threes a game. People weren't taking 15, 16 threes. I mean, that game I hit 12, I took 19. How I took 19, I really don't know.
I can tell you.
Well, we knew the Sixers defense.
I was just going to say the Sixers big men between Sam Dalembert and Chris Webber and a little bit of Rodney Rogers. Them guys fell asleep at the wheel, man. They let you have at it. And
some of that was their defensive philosophy, though. The coach his philosophy was the statistics was a 3-point percentage was less than a 2. So, don't give up the 2s. Whereas, now you look at analytics, everything is a 3. Everything's a 3 or a layup now. So again, I would say I got lucky, but I was hot. And you look at those next 2-3 games against the Sixers, I think I came back and hit 9 more the game after that against the Sixers. So it was just their defensive philosophy.
12 out of 19 is not luck, sir. You were pretty hot, man. Take credit where it's due.
Most definitely. Let's see. Mr. Marshall, other than 1 year for you in Toronto, you shot a high clip when you got to Toronto from the 3. Your percentages back-to-back in those seasons were, like I said, other than 1 year in Utah, those are your highest clips. And that actually, kind of was a transformation for you. And you really came into your own as a shooter. And you became a household name as a shooter. Prior to that point, you were going to the bucket, doing your thing early in the Golden State years. Y'all wasn't winning, but it really clicked in Toronto. What was it? Was it a conversation? What happened? Were you putting up more shots during practice? And then, ironically, that was it for you? And then moving forward, how did you continue to prepare and prep prior to those games to continue your legacy as a 3-point shooter and a good shooter?
I think it was more just a style of play. The style of play and the offense that the coach had put in is what made me get those shots. I think a lot of times before that, we did a lot of one-on-one basketball, so I stood around a lot and probably didn't get I got more of my shots off of offensive rebounding and, maybe kickouts and things like that. But I think once I started getting my threes and jump shots and stuff, like if you look at Utah, my numbers were high there. It was because I was part of the offense. When Carl obviously was the main guy, but I was the second leading scorer on that team both years I was there, because when he went out of the game, they ran the offense through me. And then when I got to Toronto, I think, like I said, it was just the offense that we ran. When I got to Cleveland, LeBron specifically came after me because he wanted to open the floor up. So he came after me so I could shoot. And if you really look at LeBron's legacy, after I played with him in Cleveland, he's always had a big man like me. Somebody that could open the floor up for him. So I always feel special about that, helping him win some championships because he knew what he needed around him. I just think a lot of it was just, the offense. And as far as preparing for it, I always came out before every game. I shot my certain amount of threes. Practice, we always did a lot of shooting games. And then a lot of it really and truly just depended on the matchups. It was always great because I can't remember his name right now, but when we used to play the Pistons, young guy, I think he was in the second or third year, he used to always be like, yeah, let me get some of this oldness over here, this and that, whatever. And I used to always tell him, it was like, you don't want none of this. I'm about to use my smartness and brains on him. And it was funny because as soon as he checked in the game, I just start laughing. I hit 2 or 3 threes and they subbed his ass right back out that game. It's like, and it's because I give you a story. It's like, I remember going into the league my second year in the league, and Chris Mullin and Rod Higgins were on the team as well. Rod Higgins was the assistant coach. He was just like 2 years removed. So it was me and another player. They wanted to play us two after practice one day. So we both like, yo, y'all old heads don't want to play us. Like, we young, we energetic, we athletic. Y'all want to play us, this and that. Man, they kicked our ass. And that's when I realized that you're young and dumb when it comes to the NBA. It's about when you get older and you get smarter, it's about reading, it's about this and that, whatever. And I learned that right away. And it was good to be able to do that to the young boy, because I remember it being done to me. So being able to do that back to the young boy. And I think that's where people don't understand when they watch the NBA, the young guys, yeah, they look good and all this and that. But the reason they're getting beat is because the old heads and whatever, they know how they study their game, they study their movements, you know, the cuts, the reading of the ball and all that stuff. And that's when you become really good as you get older.
So what you're telling me is experience trumps athleticism.
What happened?
What you're telling me is experience trumps athleticism.
Oh, definitely.
That comes with experience. And speaking of experience, I want to pivot for a moment and ask you, as a player, you've had some notable coaches. You had P.J. Carlissimo, Mike Brown, Sam Mitchell, Jerry Sloan, Rick Adelman. Now that you've transitioned into coaching, who would you say has influenced your coaching style the most?
Again, I always go back to Utah, and I would say Jerry Sloan, because I was on some teams where you guys see it, you know, dummies. You've been on teams, and the best player doesn't get yelled at. And trust me, I went through it at UConn. I mean, I can make a mistake, but this other player made the same mistake, and he's getting chewed out, and this and that, whatever. And you know, I went through it at Golden State, where I'm sitting here like, dude, he just missed the box out too. Like, but he's the best player, so you don't yell at him. I was with that later on. But it was funny because, you know, I think it was my second or third game in Utah after I got traded. And, like, Jerry Sloan was really strict. Like, if your strings and your shorts were hanging out, like, he would call a timeout or sub you out. Like, you had to be uniform correct. You know, you couldn't have the writing on your shoes, you know, all that stuff. He was, like, about the game of basketball. So like a second and third game and stuff. And I think we got off to a slow start. I don't know who we were playing, but the team got off to, like, it was like a 12-2 opening start, and he calls a timeout. And we're in the huddle, and he looks at John and Carl and was like, you two MFers are supposed to be our captains, and this is the way y'all come out and start the game. Y'all sit your asses down until I tell y'all to go back in. And neither one of them said anything. They didn't talk back to him. They didn't whatever. They sat there on the bench, subbed us in. We went in there, went on the run. When he thought it was time, they went back into the game. And to me, that was respect right there. Like, and for him to get on the best two, like, them dudes was in the Hall of Fame after 8 years. You know what I mean? And to be able to yell at them and get that respect the same way you yell at the 15th man on the team, that was a lot of respect for me, because I came from a Golden State team where the best players didn't get yelled at, only the subs did, and whatever. So Jerry Sloan is somebody that I've always cherished and always tried to take his coaching style.
So now, as a coach, CCSU, your son's playing there. Are you as hard on him as everyone else? And the other question that I have in regards to that is, as a professional, you were away from home a lot because you had a job to do. So you missed some time, you know, some years. But now you have your son coaching. You're coaching your son at CCSU, probably spending more time with him than you had in years because he's there every day with you now. What have you learned about him that you didn't know now that you have to see him every day, and probably vice versa?
Well, it's funny because the best part about, for me, coaching him was he knew coming here he wasn't really going to play. You know, he knew he was going to be a walk-on, really knew he wasn't going to play. He could have went to some Division IIs on scholarship and would have played. But he's the one who came to me and was like, you know, Dad, I want to come there with you and spend some time with you, since we didn't really have a chance to hang out a lot and all that stuff, you know, with you gone and all that stuff. And I thought that was something cool and something special and things. So I didn't really have to yell at him too often because he knew he wasn't going to really play. You know, I think for me, learning about him, you know, just about what his passions were in life, how he was, how he's a jokester, how he's a smart ass, you know, just a lot of different things like that. And I think for him, he learned the passion that I had for the sport, things like that. And I think it was great, and he graduated this year, and it was funny because I actually sent him a text probably about a month ago, and I just said, hey, I didn't get a chance to tell you this, but, I just want to tell you thanks for coming to play with me. I know we didn't have the 4 years as far as winning as you wanted to, but just being able to spend time with you, really made this journey special for me. And, I just told him how proud I was of him and whatever. And I think he really something that he needed to hear and stuff. And, I think it's been good because out of my kids, he's actually one of the ones who really didn't get a chance to see him a lot more just because of not only was I gone then, but then I started coaching right towards his career, and I was gone, with recruiting and things like that more times when his games were going and stuff. So I think he probably didn't, probably benefited the least out of all the kids.
Got it.
So, Mr. Marshall, I'm gonna end since we're talking about family with a family-oriented question. You come from an athletic family. Your sons, your boys have gone on to play at the next level as well. But one thing that stuck out to me, just looking at your family lineage and just being from Reading and know what goes on, you have an iconic uncle who played and is a Hall of Famer. What were some of the things that stuck out growing up under him and watching him that you try to not only instill into yourself, but some things that you might have passed on to your boys as they pursue their careers in sports as well?
Well, I think for me, I wasn't really able to watch him play that much. I mean, he went to the Hall of Fame in '75. So I wasn't really able to watch his games. When I would see him on ESPN and all that stuff, I definitely made sure I tried to watch his games. And just to see how good he was and how agile he was and hearing everybody talk about him was great. For me, having an idol that was somebody in my family was even more special. I mean, every time he would come visit, I ran to him like a little kid, even though he was family, things like that. And I think one of the biggest parts he was for me was, I remember when he started hearing how good I was, and I remember when he showed up to my game, my AAU game, I think I wanted to put on the biggest show for him that possible. And I remember when I left that game, after that game was over and him just giving me the biggest hug of how proud he was of me, I think I went home and cried because as proud as I was of him, being in the Hall of Fame and stuff, he was even more proud of me. And, for him helping me with my recruiting and remember him writing me a letter, just about how to deal with everything and things like that. It was special, because having somebody who made it was also an eye opener. But then also having another uncle who could have made it, but he did some of the things he did in life were wrong. So I think it was like I was blessed. I had an uncle who made it, who did everything right, but then another uncle who could have made it and did some things wrong where I was able to learn, okay, don't do this if I want to make it and things like that. So, but definitely having I had an athletic family on both sides of my family. My dad's side and my mom's side were very athletic. I guess I got the lucky one. I'm the tallest and was able to make it. And, so I guess I got lucky.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, I got this. I took it from my parents' crib. Just iconic for me, man. Like I told you, thank you for all that you've done for myself and friends and, just being great. Some people don't know the area for a lot of different things, whether it's, goods, chips or whatever, sandwiches, all the stuff that comes from Berks County. And people talk about, your uncle being great from the area, Stu Jackson, now Lonnie Walker, even Taylor Swift's from the area. But for me, it will always be you, sir. And I thank you for what you've done. You've been a great man. Great man is just led a great life, great professional. And we thank you so much for coming on the Stoop with us today, Mr. Marshall. It means a lot.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anytime. Anytime I have time, I'll be glad to be on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, for my guy, Kev, thank y'all so much for tuning in to the Stoop. It's been another great episode. Talk to you soon. Take care.
Some say that it gets no real on the field or the court. We capture the thrillers. Some opinions and all of the truth. Real people talking real sports on the Stoop.